A new $40 million plan will be unveiled by the government today in a bid to prevent veteran suicides. The announcement comes after a plea from the families of fallen veterans in the Daily Telegraph's Save Our Heroes campaign. Joining me now is editor Ben English. Thanks so much for your time. This has been a long campaign for you, and we have a huge result today. Are you happy about it?
Yeah, I'm very, very happy. I'm most happy for Julie-Ann Finney and the other brave mothers who have maintained this battle for some time since their sons passed away. You know, they can't bring their sons back, but at least now there will be a legacy of their deaths, and particularly a legacy for this incredibly courageous campaign that Julie-Ann and the rest of the mothers have waged. It was irresistible to us back in June last year when we learned of her son, Julie-Ann's son, David's plight and what he actually went through. It just went to a huge breakdown in the culture of defence, of DVA, and it became apparent to us that with 400 deaths since 2001, that there was a serious problem, and somehow it wasn't being recognised and it wasn't being dealt with sufficiently.
So we have this big announcement today. There's long been calls for a royal commission. Some in the defence community have been divided, but I think that has fallen by the wayside. What we have from the Prime Minister today isn't a royal commission, but all the powers of a royal commission. That's better, isn't it?
Absolutely better. Look, we couldn't have asked for anything better than this, I believe, at this point. And we'll have to see how it's fleshed out with the legislation once it's put before Parliament. But the way the Prime Minister explained it to me is that this not only does it have the powers of the Royal Commission, as you said, but it will actually be able to look contemporaneously at suicides and other mental health issues as they arise going forward. It's a permanent position with the full powers of a Royal Commission. This is a fantastic result because you're not just looking in the rear vision at a moment in time, you're actually going to be dealing with these issues as they arise.
Yeah, and we will work to see the legislation and to see how this is actually enacted and can be enacted. But Ben, when you look at what we hear from the experts about what needs to be done about veteran suicide, there's no silver bullet. It is a very difficult issue to deal with, but these are our heroes. I guess the most important thing is that, yes, we have these rolling powers of a Royal Commission. We will eventually have, hopefully, all the information available to us. Do you think there's the same enthusiasm to implementing whatever comes out of this?
That's a great question. I think it'll be a great challenge because Defence is a massive organisation, as is DVA, and you have entrenched cultures there. They will have to be challenged if we're going to see any meaningful change. And there's quite rightly there will be a great deal of cynicism amongst veterans who've had their hearts broken for years and years with the sort of bureaucratic walls that they've faced. A lot of these guys who died, the stories are just they're so heartbreaking because you feel that their deaths could have been avoidable had the bureaucracy been more responsive. I think one of the good aspects of this announcement is that there's going to be a family advocate position. So basically, someone who can speak directly to families and guide them through the minefield that is the process in which to get psychiatric help and other assistance.
Hopefully there are lessons out of this. Veteran suicide is certainly shocking, but suicide of young people, indeed in every age group across this nation, is a national shame. Do you think we can learn lessons out of this cohort and extrapolate that out to the rest of the population?
No, great point. Absolutely no question. We're at a junction in history right now where on every other indicator of success, we're on the up. We're wealthier globally. We're wealthier, we're healthier, we're living longer. The only indicator that's going down, particularly amongst young people, is mental health. I think it's coincided with the advent of social media. I think that's a massive variable in this. But no one's been able to grapple with it. I absolutely, there's no doubt that a laser focus on what's happening to these young men and women will actually have the added benefit of giving us insights into mental health right across the spectrum.
Yep, it's very rare that we can bring some good news, but this is certainly a huge leap forward that many have been calling for today. And congratulations to you, Ben, and your reporters for really keeping this on the front page. consistently. Let's, before I let you go, there are other things around. On the front page of the Australian newspaper today, a picture of Barnaby says it all, head in hands. He had another roll of the dice. It didn't work. Michael McCormack remains leader. There's been a bit of, what would we say, spin behind the scenes as to what the numbers were in the end. I don't think it was as tight as 10-11. I think Barnaby was perhaps a bit too optimistic about what people were telling him. We all know that people lie when it comes to how they're going to vote in a secret ballot. But what feedback have you been given through the Daily Telegraph about what the Nationals' problems are and what they need to do?
Well, it comes down to being effective in cutting through with their message. And that's the chief criticism of Michael McCormack, and it hasn't gone away. To be really unkind, he's too boring. He's actually not getting his message, or he's actually not being seen as vigorously enough advocating for what is actually going on in the bush. And I think that's been apparent through the last year of drought and through the bushfires, is that the voice of rural people wasn't seen to have been very effectively represented by McCormack. Barnaby, for all his dramas, no one can deny that he was, to coin a cliche, a very effective retail politician. So it's not over. It's not resolved unless McCormack can have a very dramatic personality change.
We will see if that happens. Perhaps, look, he was fired up this morning. He says he's going to give it a red-hot go. Interesting, just before I let you go, Warren Truss was probably in the same mould as Michael McCormack. Yeah. When you look back at national leader history, Barnaby Joyce is the outlier. He's the unusual one.
I'd probably put Tim Fisher in the same category.
Very true.
I think he was tremendous. But, yeah, you're right. They've had a lot of dour, just workmanlike leaders, and that's not necessarily a bad thing as long as they're seen to be delivering results. And I think that what the Nats want to see is some passion from McCormack, so that's a good sign from this morning. No one denies that he's actually a terrific bloke. You've obviously met him a number of times. He's a very nice bloke, and he's not stupid. He's switched on, but he just seems to be struggling to deliver the cutting messages that are needed to get action for the bush. Although ScoMo, it must be said, Scott Morrison has actually stepped into that fray a great deal, obviously belatedly with the bushfire response, but particularly with the drought. It was the very first thing he did when he came in as Prime Minister. So perhaps some of that space has been taken up by the Prime Minister.
Yeah, I think that's part of the problem. Perhaps the real Michael, who knows? A bit like the real Julia. Didn't quite work for her. But anyway,
No.
Ben English, great to see you. Appreciate your time.
Thanks very much.